Fallout 4 is one of the most modded games ever, having a massive catalog of different mods to download, and some of those stand out above the rest. What I'm talking about are some of the largest mods out there, proper DLC-sized experience that you could download for Fallout 4 completely for free. And as we are on the road to Starfield, I wanted to catalog all of the major ones and really all of the good DLC-sized mods you should care about. Which, speaking of, first up we have what I would argue is one of the most underrated and overlooked DLC-sized mods out there right now with Hearts of Darkness. This is a massive mod that will basically just add on an entire Raider-themed DLC into Fallout 4. This being 15 plus hours of content as you actually experience it all. It's a pretty interesting one in that it'll actually begin to explore the dark parts of the Raiders in Fallout 4, as well as the more nuanced motivations that some of the characters and some of the people in this wasteland will have. This mod has a really fun gameplay loop of being both around combat and story. On the story side, there's going to be a couple of new characters added to the Commonwealth. They'll recruit you at one of the existing locations in game, and that's a common theme. This mod heavily utilizes existing locations, giving them more purpose and meaning. And over time, you're quickly going to find yourself joining or even captured by raider gangs in the Commonwealth. And in the early parts of this mod, I think it does a pretty good job, and it creates an interesting situation where you're finding out more about those nameless, faceless raiders that you're always fighting in Fallout 4. What would happen if a raider actually captured you? It really gets into the dark side of how many of these characters that you don't really know as characters are probably acting. But even further, the major faction you are joining and working with is a new group of raiders that are less motivated by the dark aspects and more around greed and looting and raiding. From the start of this mod, you can tell each of the characters you are introduced to has their own personality and set of motivations. There's a lot of depth to the characters, and this mod does a good job of divvying up the conversation, so you can keep them short and sweet if you just want to get more into the action and progress the quests, or you could ask a lot of questions to find out more and more about what is going on in these people's brains. But as I mentioned before, it does have a nice gameplay loop. You're going to spend a lot of time actually in combat or actually exploring and running around with some of the other characters. It's not just a story or dialogue driven experience. There is a lot of gameplay elements that will complement those story elements also. And a quintessential part about this experience overall is the voice acting is top tier.
Yes, we're raiders, and I'm sure that makes you a bit uneasy. But we're not going to ask you to raid settlements or anything like that. What you did against Gaff's crew and those gunners, that's what we want you to keep doing, but with us. And you get paid.
The characters sound amazing with this mod, and the voice acting across the board really shines. It really drags you into the mod even further. As well as the mod realizes it's in Fallout 4. I feel like most mods take one of two approaches here, where they either just kind of ignore Fallout 4's main story, you're playing a different thing with the mod, but this one doesn't do that, and it's kind of refreshing. You have dialogue choices where you could talk about how you're searching for your wife or son, or even how you're impacted by the death of your wife. As well as the Gunners became one of the major enemy factions with this, and as I mentioned earlier, you're going to be spending a lot of time in familiar places, existing locations in Fallout 4, and it gives you opportunities to roleplay as who you want, whether you're good, evil, or you just don't really care about what's going on. You'll have decisions available to you to choose one of those. And overall, this really is a top tier option as far as DLC sized mods for Fallout 4 that isn't getting nearly enough recognition. But if you want more of a true Fallout story, we also do have Fourville. This is one of those mods that I feel like just really encapsulates Fallout. It just feels like it's a Fallout quest and experience. At times it is over the top, but at other times it is just very ingrained in reality and grim. The story is here, the day the bombs dropped, members from the surrounding area flocked to Vault 4 to seek refuge. Except they quickly found that the vault was already closed. One of these refugees decided he was going to stay, and he set up a tent here just outside the vault. And over time, more people came, and eventually Fourville was born. And to be clear, this isn't a traditional vault story. These aren't vault dwellers. Rather, this is a bunch of people who are sitting outside of a vault that has never opened, and they're really not sure if it will open. But some people have incredibly strong feelings about that. In fact, there's an entire religion around the Vault 4. This will be a very character-driven story, much later on the combat and more about the politics and dynamics of this town. As you enter into the town, there is an election going on, and you're going to play a role in what happens there, siding with one candidate or another, and really seeing their conflicting views, whether it be on if the vault will ever open, or even what's happening with the town overall. You'll do a bunch of odd jobs for the town's people and have a lot of character interactions with the citizenry. And many of these citizens are very interesting in that over-the-top Fallout nature.
Keeps saying I need to download update, but when I press the button, it just says cannot communicate with cloud server. I'm not sure what a lot of those words mean. I've tried everything I can think of. I even took it outside where it could see the clouds, but no luck.
And there's a healthy amount of side content that will involve building up this town as you want to. This too is a pretty lengthy experience at over 8 hours in total, and it just breathes Fallout. It has a lot of wacky ideas and people being ingrained in that vault culture, and the voice acting here too is really great, and a lot of moments it's actually really funny. If you're looking for something more combat and exploration focused, I would probably focus more on Hearts of Darkness, but if you just want to experience and really delve into this town and its people, this is the experience for you. But then with a bit of a different type of DLC, we do have South of the Sea. And not only are we going to be looking at the main mod here, but more importantly, one of the big reasons I'm actually including it in this video is thanks to the optimization and compatibility patches for South of the Sea that I think a lot of people are overlooking and is actually a separate mod, which has been getting a lot of updates, even updates as of this week. South of the Sea at its core is going to be an expansion on the glowing sea in Fallout 4. It'll add in over 65 completely new locations for you to explore, many with new enemies, and even a plethora of new items come with this package. And that really is the core of this mod. It'll take what was kind of an interesting area in Fallout 4 and make it an incredibly interesting area in Fallout 4 thanks to the sheer amount of new content that gets added here. A lot of this is going to be dungeons and focused around exploration. A lot of these dungeons will have their own themes or stories within them. The Children of Adam will play a big role all throughout this, and you're going to find a bunch of new homes and locations dedicated around the Children of Adam that you can make friends with or oftentimes fight against. But it'll also add in some NPCs for you to actually interact with. There's some refugees hiding out here, but also a very extensive tunnel network. You can spend a lot of time running around this. It definitely ups the horror elements of the mod overall with the low lighting, but there's also a lot to discover in these tunnels if you put the time in. You can find a ton of new items all within these new locations, this being both new armors, new weapons, and a ton of new chems, and of course you can use them for yourself. Some of these are from other mods and are added to this mod with permission, but it does really feel nice to have, especially the Children of Adam, be pretty unique at points. But really one of the special parts about this mod is its exploration. There's a lot to find and uncover with the extensive tunnel network and typical above ground locations. Unlike the previous mods in this video, it's less about a guided story experience and more about exploring a bunch of spooky new places, with some good rewards to find, like your own player home here if you want to become a more permanent resident of the glowing sea. The latest optimization and compatibility patches also add in a ton. They fix a ton of the lingering bugs of the core mod that hasn't actually gotten an update since early 2020, but further it's actually adding in some of the cut or partially implemented features from South of the Sea, making it a better time than ever to experience this one. It's one of the biggest new location mods for Fallout 4, and honestly there's not many things overhauling the glowing sea, so it's definitely worth a download if you ask me. But next up we have a mod that may actually be one of my favorite DLC sized quest mods to ever come to Fallout 4, and I only just discovered it. Hilda Hughes is a relatively small quest mod that will add in a variety of personal stories around the Institute in Fallout 4. And really the layout is it's more of a bunch of side quests rather than one long main story. Hilda Hughes is the head of the robotics department in the Institute. She is experimenting with accessing the memories of past humans who had their brain data collected before the war, this in hopes of advancing a specific Institute project. During this, you're going to have more memory sequences in Fallout 4, where you're accessing these old memories and kind of getting a glimpse at what these people were doing, what they were like before the bombs dropped. This will apply to 5 different characters, and typically the memory sequence is going to explain something about them. They're very telling about the person's character overall. And the incredibly awesome part about this is not only do you get this memory sequence, but then you get a side quest to go into the Commonwealth and find out what happened to that person, whether they had a happily ever after moment or, like is oftentimes common in Fallout, a very dark outcome. The environmental storytelling here is incredibly powerful. The writing with this mod is just top tier, and these stories just drew me in immediately. I wanted to do all of the memory sequences and side quests immediately as I got into this one. Although separately, a synth went missing right off the production line in the Institute. And now, as you are the director of the Institute, this mod only activates after the institutionalized questline. You're going to have to investigate and even write a report over what happened to that missing synth. Hilda Hughes will kind of direct you in the initial part, but from there, you're going to have to interview a bunch of different characters, passing speech checks and even getting side quests along the way. This is pretty fun because you do genuinely have to write a report over what you think happened and try and figure out what really did happen. But also, as I mentioned, there's going to be a bunch of side storylines diving more into these characters' personal feelings, or even some of the darker things that are going on with these characters. In general, I would describe this as really a fun collection of smaller stories and interactions that are very well implemented. The voice acting here too is top notch.
Alright, do you, know Freddie Hamlin? In that sense? Well, I'm, totally in love with her.
As well as the stories are interesting. The fate of the Commonwealth isn't in the balance here. It's all relatively small scale, but I honestly liked that. It felt like it really expanded the Institute in a genuine way, where you get a bunch of mini side quests to get to know the people that actually work here a bit better. As well as in general, it just gives you more Institute content. It makes siding with this faction more interesting. And last but certainly not least, we do have Welcome to Goodneighbor. This was actually one of the very early quest mods for Fallout 4, but it's been getting bug fixes even as of late 2020, over 4.5 years after its initial release. What I'll do is add in a completely new section to Goodneighbor with an extension of the main street. This is incredibly well added and visually a really nice improvement on Goodneighbor overall. Beyond that, it's going to fill out this section with all kinds of new businesses and locations of note. In these, you'll be able to pick up a few jobs from the newly added NPCs, and these are mostly simple things like a hit, doing a simple heist, or even getting your own player home. Welcome to Goodneighbor is definitely on the smaller scale and dated compared to some of the other mods in this video, but still one of the best flowing mods as far as Goodneighbor goes. A lot of people may not even realize this extra section wasn't always there if you're not that familiar with Goodneighbor. The voice acting at points can be rough, but if you can get over that, it definitely is a fun amount of extra content that is very naturally integrated into the game overall. As well as it is just pretty insane to see a mod author still updating their mod after so many years, and I feel like that definitely deserves to be rewarded. But overall, those are about 5 more DLCs you could download right now totally for free for Fallout 4, and even some of these are available on Xbox. Fallout 4 is a phenomenal game. I'm going to be continuing this series and covering more DLC sized mods in the future, so get subscribed if you're interested. I already have the list for the next video because there are so many freaking mods to cover. But with that, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.